A startling incident in a Utah courtroom involved a man taking extreme measures in an apparent attempt to escape. Christopher Clay Rudd was sitting handcuffed, appearing in court because he allegedly failed to undergo court-ordered treatment, when he suddenly made a daring, albeit unsuccessful, break for the exit, which was one floor below. Clearly, Rudd didn't want to be at the Spanish Fork courthouse, as security video released later on showed him get up, bolt out of the courtroom towards a second-floor balcony, and tumble headfirst over the railing. But in a moment of desperation, Rudd seized his chance for freedom, which would leave onlookers stunned and authorities scrambling to contain the chaos. Security footage released to the public in the aftermath of the startling event captured the harrowing sequence of events that unfolded in the blink of an eye. He bolted from his seat with a rush of adrenaline, his gaze locked on the enticing prospect of freedom just over the balcony railing. With his heart pounding in his chest over the excitement of being free, Rudd threw himself over the railing of the balcony. His fall was as short and anticlimactic as his possible freedom at the moment. Below, officers scrambled to react, their shouts lost amidst the chaos. They simply couldn't do anything but stay and watch as Rudd plummeted towards the hard ground, the sound of impact sending chills down their spines. Though he survived the fall, he bore the physical scars of his reckless attempt: a broken leg and pelvis, a fractured skull. Police said it was not clear whether he was trying to hurt himself or simply acted on impulse, afraid of going to jail. Another reckless second-story escape comes from a Tennessee inmate standing trial at the Cock County Courthouse. 33-year-old Michael Smith, a chained prisoner, boldly decided to take advantage of a brief window of opportunity to break free. Surveillance video from inside the courtroom and outside the building captured the brazen escape attempt. Michael Smith was in court Monday, February 13, 2023, with 6 other inmates. Smith stood up from the bench numerous times to get a tissue from a table near the window, the sheriff's office said. Swiftly, seemingly out of nowhere, Smith approached the window. In a daring leap of faith, he flung open the window and threw himself out, wishing to escape his fate, but ending up plummeting towards the ground below. Despite the pain coursing through his body, Smith rose to his feet in a final attempt to make a run for it. Unfortunately, officers ran towards him and stopped his attempt to escape. Shackled and handcuffed, he attempted to flee the scene again, only to be swiftly apprehended by a vigilant sergeant standing nearby. Smith was immediately taken to a medical center to be treated for the minor injuries he suffered during his fall for freedom. Because of his poor choice, he faced an additional charge of attempting to escape, on top of the charges he was in the courtroom for that day. Smith was originally in custody at the Cock County Jail on a fugitive from justice warrant from another state. There was commotion at an Asaba High Court back in 2013 as 2 robbery suspects took everybody unaware and escaped from the courtroom immediately after the judge sentenced them to death by hanging, having found them guilty on 2-count charges of armed robbery. As the gravity of their fate sank in, they made their plan to escape the courtroom. The 2 men leaped from the dock, their movements leaving everybody present in the courtroom in awe. The 2 suspects who were in the dock without handcuffs jumped out, became violent, and used a wooden barricade to block traffic leading to the court to hit prison officials chasing them. The convicts were Elvis Agbodo and Frank Adeema, both from the Ekpan community in the Uvwi local government area of the state. The prosecution had told the court that they robbed the residence of one Mrs. Mercy Omatse of valuables and cash on July 8, 2010. As they fled, the streets of Asaba became a battleground, with the sound of gunshots piercing the air as chaos reigned supreme. Despite their efforts, armed prison officials, with the help of some residents in the area, caught up with the 2 men and took them back into custody. One of them was even shot by an armed prison official who pursued him to nearby church premises, about 100 meters from the court. As a result of the incident, further proceedings in the court were disrupted as the judge, court officials, and lawyers scampered for safety as gunshots rended the air. The new controller of prisons in the state, Mr. Joseph Olenreilly, had, during a later courtesy visit to the state attorney general and commissioner for justice, Mr. Charles Ajuya, expressed worry over the large number of condemned criminals in various prison formations across the state, noting that it was worrisome as they, the condemned criminals, constantly create problems for prison officials looking after them while awaiting the hangman. Meanwhile, the State Attorney General, Mr. Charles Agbodo, condemned the lax security measures that allowed such a brazen escape to occur, vowing to tighten security to prevent future incidents. He also condemned the use of phones by some inmates even while in court, saying such an act is capable of undermining the security of officials and inmates. In the summer heat of 1984, Virginia found itself gripped by a wave of audacious escapes, culminating in the daring flight of Lorenzo Crocker, a convicted burglar determined to defy the clutches of justice. A 23-year-old, armed and dangerous convicted burglar who escaped from Suffolk County Police one Friday back in 1984 brought, then, to 9 the number of prisoners who have escaped from Virginia police and corrections officers' custody in the previous 7 weeks. Lorenzo Crocker eluded a deputy sheriff at 11:20 a.m. on a July Friday in 1984 and jumped headfirst out an unsecured second-story window of the Suffolk County Municipal Building, where he was scheduled to testify in court. The deputy attempted to prevent the escape by grabbing Crocker's ankles, but was unsuccessful, said Police Sergeant G.A. Barrett. Despite the deputy's valiant efforts to thwart his flight, Crocker's determination proved insurmountable. In the chaos of the moment, he emerged battered and bruised from the fall, his hand injured and his head possibly concussed. Yet he managed to vanish into the streets of Suffolk. 6 convicted murderers who were later captured broke out of Mecklenburg Correctional Center on May 31st, and 2 other prisoners walked away from a work detail outside the penitentiary on June 29th. The ensuing hours saw Crocker as he embarked on a whirlwind spree of crime and chaos. An hour after the escape, a man believed to be Crocker was reportedly armed with a large kitchen knife when he accosted a resident of a home 2 blocks from the court. He bound the woman to a bed, left her otherwise unharmed, and took clothing from the house. Undeterred by the authorities' pursuit, Crocker's trail of mayhem continued as he targeted an elderly man visiting a cemetery, robbing him of his car and a meager sum of money, $100, before vanishing once more. The stolen vehicle, stripped and abandoned in Portsmouth, was later found by authorities, who identified it a few days after the incident. With each passing hour, the hunt for the elusive fugitive intensified as authorities pursued leads and combed through the shadows in search of their elusive prey. "We're following up leads as to his possible whereabouts," said Barrett, who refused to give details of the search at the time. Lorenzo Crocker was found several weeks later on September 5, 1984, and arrested by FBI agents in New York. Released footage has unveiled the startling moment when an Adelaide prisoner, Daniel James Nicholson, orchestrated a dramatic escape attempt upon learning that his bail had been revoked during a pre-sentence hearing at Christie's Beach Magistrates Court in September. In the CCTV footage, the 35-year-old is seen positioned behind a transparent partition within the courtroom when a sheriff's officer enters the dock, prompting Nicholson to abruptly rise from his seat. Climbing onto a nearby table, he aggressively swats at the approaching officer and another who rushes forward to assist in detaining him. Struggling, Nicholson stumbles and crosses over the partition, landing on his knees on an adjacent table within the open area of the court. As this unfolds, a police prosecutor swiftly reacts, seizing Nicholson from the table and forcefully throwing him to the floor in an attempt to thwart his escape. Despite the prosecutor's intervention, Nicholson persists in his bid for freedom, causing injury to one of the officers who hastened to provide assistance. Eventually subdued, Nicholson is apprehended, and the sheriff's officers escort him out through an open door. During a subsequent hearing, a judge characterized Nicholson's escape attempt as impulsive, violent, and forceful, noting his documented struggles with anger management and impulse control, as well as his history of non-compliance with court orders. Bail was once again denied, with the court urged to consider a sentence that prioritizes community protection and reflects the severity of Nicholson's actions. Nicholson pleaded guilty to the charges of attempting to escape custody and 2 counts of recklessly causing harm to a prescribed emergency worker. The injuries sustained by the sheriff's officers during the scuffle were significant, with one requiring a moon boot for 8 weeks due to a foot injury, and the other experiencing a clicking jaw and headache. In his defense, Nicholson's legal representation highlighted his remorse for the incident and cited his long-standing struggle with illicit drug use. They advocated for leniency, proposing a suspended sentence or home detention as viable alternatives to incarceration. Despite the remorse expressed by Nicholson and his legal team, the gravity of the situation cannot be understated. The attempt to escape custody not only endangered the lives of law enforcement officers, but also undermined the integrity of the judicial process. In sentencing Nicholson, the court faced the complex task of balancing accountability for his actions with considerations of rehabilitation and public safety.